This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Long education.
Yeah, you know, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
And welcome to it. It's Monday here at the Steve Gruber Show. I greatly appreciate your tuning in. The Clean Power Plan is now the law of the land heading forward. The EPA's Clean Power Plan to cut carbon emissions from existing power plants is now moving forward. The EPA publishing the long-awaited plan on Friday, opening the climate rules up to legal challenges from the states, by the way. That won't happen in Michigan. Governor Snyder embraced the Clean Power Plan here and is implementing a Michigan version so that Michigan has at least the lead in the state here. But states and industry groups dependent on oil and coal and other so-called fossil fuels are not so impressed. A flurry of lawsuits expected at the U.S. Court of Appeals as the EPA agency filed its final version of the new regulations. All but 2 of the 24 states filing challenges are led by Republicans, but there are 2 states that are democratically led. They deride the plan as an unlawful power grab by Washington bureaucrats that will kill coal mining, which it's already doing. You've heard these stories. President Obama has destroyed mining in Pennsylvania and West Virginia, also damaged it in Wyoming. And is sending millions of dollars there for, job training programs. You've taken their jobs away, but you can go back to school. You're 50, you're 60 years old. You want to go back to sit in school? The Clean Power Plan, one of the most far-reaching energy regulations in the nation's history, so says West Virginia Attorney General Patrick Morrisey. He's among those leading the challenges. I have a responsibility to protect the lives of millions of working families, the elderly and the poor, from such illegal and unconscionable federal government action. Now, here in Michigan, we've not done anything. We're not going to do anything. Because, we're not going to. We're embracing it. We're closing 9 power plants by April, as you know. More to come. 60 will be closed in the Great Lakes region. And everybody says it'll have no impact. Well, if it'll have no impact, then why did we need the plants at all? Why were those plants running in the first? If we didn't need them, why would we be concerned at all with replacing them? I mean, obviously, we didn't need that 1.5 gigawatts. So shut them down. It means nothing. Heck, shut down a couple more. If we don't need them, we could save money by that logic. So let's go with that. The new rules require states to cut carbon emissions by 30% in 15 years by 2030. Each state has a customized target and is responsible for drawing up an effective plan to meet the goal. From the Sierra Club Executive Director Michael Brune, you get, we expect polluters and their allies to throw everything they've got at the Clean Power Plan. We expect them all to fail. The Clean Power Plan is based on a law passed by Congress, upheld by the Supreme Court, and demanded by the American people. Were you demanding some Clean Power Plan? I was not demanding. Were you demanding? I don't know who these American people are that were demanding this, but I guess I don't know them. Because every day of my life here in Michigan, I found Michigan to be clean and green and wonderful, and it still is. What a tremendous fall we've had. Spectacular fall. Fall colors and clean water, great fishing, great boating, best summer of my life. Because Michigan's a dirty place and we're demanding clean, energy, and we have to have nothing but windmills. I find windmills to be an eyesore. I do. I find all of those, when you see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of windmills together, it's an eyesore. Why do I want to look at that? I'd rather look at birds and bushes and trees And bears and deer, and and I don't want to look at windmills as far as the eye can see. I find it disgusting. The EPA claims to have sweeping power to enact such regulations based on a rarely used provision of the Clean Air Act. Some say it does not exist. The EPA regulates other power plants and pollutants under different sections of the Clean Air Act. Now they're moving toward curbing airplane emission under the Clean Air Act. Now, Michigan is among those challenging part of this law in court, but effectively it will change nothing here, at least not in the short term. Consumers Energy and DTE continue to move forward, and will continue to move forward with mothballing those coal plants. And again, we apparently didn't need them, and why replace them if they were so irrelevant and we didn't need the 1.5 gigawatts? Why replace them? Seems like a pretty simple question, doesn't it? I mean, seriously, if we don't need them, why bother? So there you go. Let's see here. All right, we've got a hotline call real quick. Brian in Southern Michigan on the line. Brian, welcome back.
Hey, good morning, Steve. I visited Mexico a while ago, the Mayan temples, and they live in these shanties and dirt floors and stuff. And I came to the realization a while back that these greenie weenies, that's how they want everybody to live. They have a little solar panel here and there, and they live very primitively.
That's exactly what they want, in fact. They had this notion that somehow if we live like it's the 18th century, that somehow that's better for the world. I mean, we can get rid of cars altogether, like I was talking about earlier. You can have, because people do not need to be driving cars, and don't think I'm kidding. The left will be focusing their hatred on cars sometime very soon, because you don't need to be going for a Sunday drive. You don't need to be going, for a joyride. You don't need to drive up to get a pizza when you've got a sandwich in your refrigerator. And if you think I'm joking, don't kid yourself. These are the kind of regulations they want to bring to you. They're down there in Ann Arbor, Michigan right now. Google and other companies figuring out how they can have cars that have no driver, so you'll have no choice, and they will determine how much fuel you get to use and where you get to go and when.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law, he's one of those greenie weenies, and they're kind of hypocrites because, like, you'll get, like, some bacon grease on their stuff. They'll kind of sneak it in there. It shows how bad they are. It's like, you're just trying to, it's just all hypocrisy. I think that they should go live, the ones that suggest all this nonsense should go live there and stuff. And live the way they preach at us.
I think they should go back and 14 after. Thank you, Brian, for calling. I think they should go back and live like Henry David Thoreau. At least they had some thought into that. Go read the book Walden, written in 1848, and go back to living, in a more natural and simple life. Go ahead and do that. But don't sit there and pontificate with your smartphone and your computer and your windmill. The windmill that does as much damage to the environment as anything else. The rare earth elements that are required to build such things. It is 14 after on the Steve Gruber Show on a Monday. We'll be right back.
Taking a closer look at the stories that affect you most with a big dose of common sense.
It's 18 after on a Monday. Welcome to the Steve Gruber Show. If you'd like to join the conversation, 888-900-9966 is the hotline. This hour brought to you in part by Mesa. Good health, good business, and great schools. I guess this whole notion now is somehow they're starting to paint Hillary as the survivor. Hillary, the innocent victim of this vast right-wing conspiracy who's been able to overcome all of these great challenges to rise up, to offer her services to you, the American people. And how could you turn a blind eye to this dedicated civil servant? Or something like that. Ed Klein, our next guest, author of the bestseller, Unlikable, The Problem with Hillary. Ed, welcome back to the program.
Good to be with you, Steve. Thank you.
I mean, that's pretty much it, isn't it? Paint Hillary as some sort of victim who has been able to overcome and rise above the din to offer herself to you and I.
I would only add female victim. Other than that, I
yeah.
think you got it right on.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That was part of my war on women, Ed. There it was. Because I didn't mention the fact that she's a woman.
That's right.
Oh, good Lord. I mean, you look at this every day, but okay, Biden's out now. Okay, Joe Biden's out, but he left like he was a rejected child. I don't know if Valerie Jarrett told him it just wasn't going to work right now, but he left his toe just far enough in the water that if Hillary does run into a jam, I think he can jump back in. What do you think?
I think that's exactly right. He was asked that question last night on 60 Minutes and said, oh, no. I mean, Joe came on like butter wouldn't melt in his mouth last night on 60 Minutes. But the fact of the matter is that Joe didn't see a way forward head-to-head with Hillary because she was so far ahead of him in money, organization, endorsements, ground game, and so forth. But if she runs into trouble or if she's indicted for use of her private email system, then I'm sure Joe would welcome the party to come to him and beg him to, Joe, come save the party.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly right. The whole thing that he gave on 6 Minutes. Well, I walked into the bedroom and Jill and I told her there just wasn't time, and we embraced. And it's like, who writes this garbage?
Well, and it's amazing that he thinks people buy it. It's
Well, the problem is
something out of a 1940s Jimmy Stewart movie.
Well, it is, but the problem is, Ed, some people do buy it. I mean, look around. I mean, you've been out on the streets. I mean, it's like a cattle call for sheep out there, Ed.
Well, there's a lot of truth to what you say.
Yeah.
But, I think the reason Joe didn't really get in is because he had been let to be known that Barack Obama and Michelle Obama get nightly reports from Valerie Jarrett on the progress of the FBI Justice Department investigation of Hillary's use of a private email and whether or not she violated federal laws by having top secret documents on that email system.
Sure.
And it appears from what my sources tell me that the reason the president said in public to Steve Croft, I believe it was, that there was no violation was because he had been told that the FBI is, in fact, not turning up indictable evidence that they can prove in court. It's one thing to suspect something. It's one thing to have evidence that you think is criminal, but the FBI does not make a case unless the prosecutors really believe that they can convince a jury of 12 people that there is intent and that the person knowingly violated the law. And I think that's what the president is telling Joe, and Joe is saying to himself, well, if she's not going to be indicted, I better duck out right now.
Well, and fair point. But she's still a damaged person. And I think the title of your book is exactly where it needs to be. We're on the line with Ed Klein, author of the bestseller, New York Times bestseller, Unlikable, The Problem with Hillary. You see, here's where I think Biden made his mistake, in my estimation, is whether you like his policies or his politics or not, he's an affable guy. He's the guy that people like. But Hillary is a cold fish, as my father used to say. She's like, who wants to hang out with her? Not anybody. Nobody wants to hang out with her. I mean, people would sit down and have a beer with Joe Biden, and that, and Americans, except for maybe Richard Nixon, Americans, by and large, elect people they kind of like. She's
That's absolutely true. And every president, except perhaps for Nixon, has been the more likable candidate. And here's Hillary, very unlikable. It's interesting. I was reading about why Ben Carson is surging ahead of Donald Trump in Iowa, and it all comes down to likability.
Sure.
The people in Iowa just find him more likable, more kind, gentle, that he isn't, in it for himself, that he seems to be more concerned about the people and blah, blah, blah. Whereas Donald, is blustering about hating everybody in the world and making it look like he's a very unlikable guy.
Sure. I think at the end of the day, I think the Republicans have received a gift for Joe Biden leaving the race. I believe that people have a fatigue of Hillary Clinton overall. I think, half the country, I think you start with, doesn't particularly care for her. I think that's a fair assessment. And I think that even Democrats are worn out by the act, if you, because it's this whole act. You've seen it before. You know how it ends. Blame the messenger. Say that it's old news. It's the same. They play the same cards all the time, depending on the scandal, and people are worn out.
I'll tell you, the only thing I think she's got going for her, it certainly isn't her personality, and I think you're right about Clinton fatigue. The one thing she's got going for her is the mainstream media, which, after the Benghazi hearings, and after it was established absolutely without doubt that she knew that night of the attack on our consulate that it was a Al-Qaeda-linked attack, as she said to her daughter in an email that night.
Yes.
And then and for 2 or 3 weeks told the American public that cockamamie story about the video. You'd think that if that alone would disqualify her from the presidency. Except
for the mainstream media has her back every step of the way. Ed Klein, always a great conversation. The book, if you haven't bought it yet, you should, and read it. Unlikable, The Problem with Hillary. Ed, we'll talk very soon. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, but Ed Klein, everybody, here on the Steve Gruber Show on a Monday. Unlikable, The Problem with Hillary. We'll be right back.
Genuine Michigan common sense on display every day.
All right, well, the battle lines are, I don't know if they've ever really changed. This whole debate in road funding seems to go back and forth, a lot of finger pointing, and, a lot of people standing around looking at each other. It sounds a lot like the last road crew I saw. Easy, fellas, it was too easy. Nobody get excited now. But we really don't seem to make a lot of progress. A lot of conversations, a lot of plans, a lot of this will work, that won't work, a lot of yelling, screaming, and carrying on. But at the end of the day, we still don't have a road plan. 33 after on this Monday. Joining me now to talk about it, Kyle Melinn, the editor of MERS News. Kyle, welcome back to the program.
Hey, good morning, Steve.
Here we are, a bunch of people standing around looking at each other. Like I said, like the guys out on the road crews, which will get me in trouble. But so it is. No real, the plan's out there now. But as soon as it comes out, I have Tim Greimel and other folks here on the show say, no, it's not going to work. This is a bad idea. That's a bad idea. Nobody, is immediate pushback. It's baffling.
Well, I think the people that you got to pay attention to is what Kevin Cotter and Arlen Meekhoff are saying. Those are the people who have the majorities in their caucus, and so they're the ones who we have to be paying attention to. And do those two agree with each other? Because once those two agree with each other, and now the House has proven they can get their caucus behind each other, that's going to be the real question right now. I don't think that we know that they're quite there yet, but I think it's fair to say, though, Steve, really, if you look at their plans, they're only about $200 million apart, and I don't know, probably maybe 3 years on the plan apart. So I think it's extremely doable. It's just, making the final thing happen.
Here's the thing. One of the criticisms coming from the left, I suppose, is that, listen, this plan doesn't even get rolling until, what, 2018, right?
Right.
So, there's part of the pushback saying, well, this is all fine and well, but for the next 3 years, nothing happens. And I guess that would be a concern.
Well, now the driver registration fees do start fairly soon, and so we'll see about $400 million more in roads, somewhat soon. It's the road tax part that doesn't start until well into the future, and then that's also when the cuts start happening too. And I think that's maybe the most legitimate criticism, is that the cuts of the latest House plan don't happen until a lot of these folks are gone and don't have to worry about the budget implications. And I know that they push those far into the future because they feel like the growth in the economy or whatnot would be able to suck up any potential cuts in the budget, and at that point maybe we won't have to worry about some of the pressures on Medicaid, and we don't have to worry about maybe we'll have solved the HICA tax problem, this health insurance claim thing that's going to go away. But but it still kind of pushes the car down the road a little bit and doesn't solve maybe as much of the immediate issue as one would like.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. And as we look at this plan, I guess we'll find out if it's going to come together. The concern for a lot of folks is it's going to raise the fees. It's going to raise the fees on registration. It's going to raise the price at the pump because of the gasoline tax that will then be tied to inflation. Now, they claim that, well, this is only temporary, and of course it'll be, phased out over time. I haven't seen a tax yet. I mean, it's pretty rare that a tax is ever phased out. I figure if the gas tax goes up by 6.5 cents, it'll stay there until it goes to 7.5 cents or 8.5 cents. Call me an optimist.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but they still have to come back and renew it, right? So, I mean, even though that they raise it, I mean, if they build that sunset in there and it says this tax expires at such and such time, it does expire. It's just a future legislature can come back and obviously change that and take away the sunset, and that's obviously something they can and do on a regular basis.
Yeah, sure. All right, so let's shift gears to a topic you like to make sport of me on a little bit, I think. I think there's a little sarcasm in your voice, but you just listen to me, pal, and you're sitting in the dark next summer and your bill's $500. You won't be making fun anymore. But I'm serious about this energy concern that I have for Michigan. We're going to close these 9 plants, 1.5 gigawatts coming off the grid here in Michigan. 60 plants across the state are going to close. It's got to have some effect, because if it wouldn't have some effect, why would we have the plants in the first place? I mean, if we didn't need them to begin with, why do we have them?
Well, no, I understand what you're saying, and yes, I mean there is some impact behind closing down plants, but remember that there is a lot of electricity that's generated, just not in Michigan, but across this region too. So, I mean, so the power that's not generated in Michigan now comes from Ohio, or it comes from West Virginia, or it comes from Indiana. There is a specific organization, business group, whatever you call it, that makes sure that there is enough energy on the grid. That's not necessarily something that consumers just does on its own.
I understand that.
An actual, I don't even know what it's called.
MISO.
It's called MISO.
Yeah.
But MISO, I mean, they make sure that there's energy all over the place. And their projections are even if those plants get shut down, there is more than enough energy out there for a regular, just a regular day, Tuesday, Wednesday,
on
Thursday,
a normal
there's
day.
enough energy.
That's correct. The problem comes when you have a heat wave and you have extremely heavy draws on the grid. That's when you run into trouble, and that's what the prediction is. And let's be honest, if you're getting electricity from West Virginia or somewhere else, there's a cost associated with that. And that cost, they don't do that for free. They don't do that out of the kindness of their hearts. They send a bill to you and me and everybody else. And the people that can least afford it are those at the bottom end of the income spectrum. I mean, the people that can least afford, being out of energy are the poor folks. Come on.
Well, see, but what you're saying is that energy produced out of state costs more than energy produced in Michigan. I don't know if we've really seen that to be the case. I mean, you would think that it is, but energy moves along an electric grid, pretty fast. So I guess I haven't seen that argument made that it's more expensive to make electricity somewhere. What we've been hearing is that electricity made in Michigan means that there's Michigan jobs that are associated with those.
And that part's true.
That part is true, but there's just not a lot of jobs connected to power plants either. I mean, we were talking, 50 people? I mean, something like that. I mean, it's not necessarily a boon to the economy to have energy produced here in Michigan, even though it sounds good and you want to be energy sufficient, but it's almost like trash these days, too. Trash is moved around state borders all the time. Doesn't matter if our trash ends up down by Berrien County or Wayne County or Ohio. I mean, does it really matter one way or the other?
Well, to answer your question about electricity, first of all, there's inefficiencies in the grid. It doesn't come through. If you send 50 watts down the line in West Virginia, it doesn't arrive in Michigan as 50 watts because there's inefficiency in the lines, number one. Okay. So there is a cost associated there. And I guess we'll see it. But there are jobs available to building these power plants. I mean, over in Holland, there's a lot more than 50 people working to build that thing.
To build it, correct. Right, so to build it, but not necessarily to run it.
So there's infrastructure building and so forth, and I guess that I'm going to opt to go with the VP of Consumers, who said that, rolling blackouts could be the new normal in Michigan, plus higher electric bills. I mean, I don't think anybody really believes that our electric bills will go up no more than 3 or 4%, except the people telling us that. I guess if it turns out to be true, you know what I'll do, Kyle? I'll tell people I was wrong. But right now, I think it's prudent to be concerned about this potential problem.
I think you're right that we do have some issues that we do have to solve, but I don't think that this is a hit the panic button kind of issue. I think that this is an issue that has a lot of money attached to it in Lansing. I think there's a lot of lobbyists. I think there's a lot of PR agents who are stirring up a lot of excitement to try and get some momentum for their client. And what you're seeing is you're seeing two sides who are equally pushing the legislature in separate directions, and that's why we're not really seeing anything going on right now. I would say we have a complete standstill in Lansing as it comes to the energy situation.
Kyle Melinn, the editor of MERS News, always a pleasure, my friend.
Thanks, Steve.
Covering Michigan and the world from his bunker below the bridge. Here is Steve Gruber.
Breaking rocks in a hot sun. I'm on the law in a low one.
It's 45 after on this Monday. Our next story is the kind of story that just makes you go, I pray it's never me. I pray it is never. The worst thing in the world you can do, if you hear a knock on the door, the worst possible scenario just about if you open the door, is an IRS agent standing there going, we need to talk. If you open your door and there's a member of the Internal Revenue Service standing there with a badge saying, we need to talk, your day, your week, your month, possibly your year just went down the drain. For a couple in Fulton County, Ohio, once suspected of tax evasion, well, their day went terribly south about 3 years ago. The IRS showed up, took a bunch of their money. In fact, in a lawsuit now filed, it's claimed that almost $2 million just failed to appear at all. Stephen Dunn is a Michigan attorney representing the family. Mr. Dunn, welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you.
Well, give me a thumbnail sketch of the. I mean, $1.9 million just kind of went away, and they can't quite explain it. Lay out the story for us as to how this all came to be.
Well, on the morning of November 8, 2012, IRS agents executed simultaneous surprise raids at the Zappone's home and at their place of business. Their business was Ohio Scrap Corporation. It was a metal recycler. It was a thriving business, a growing business, and it employed a lot of people there in their community, and but not anymore. And what happened in these raids was, first of all, at the Zappone's home, the agents ransacked the house. They read the computers. They copied the contents of the computers and the cell phones, and maced their dog. And at the Zappone's place of business, the agents entered in two different raiding parties entered through two locations of the two entrances of the business. They burst in, shouting wildly, screaming profanities, and pointed their guns at the employees inside, made the employees kneel down, and then brought them outside. And the agents took control of Todd Zappone's office throughout the day on November 8, 2012. They found a safe in the office. They required Todd's wife, who was present on the premises and who works in the business, they required her to come in and open the safe. And after she did, they let her back out. Agents remained in control of the office, exclusive control of the office throughout the day, but they kept no log of who was allowed in the office at any given time. And agents came and went. Inside the safe, the agents found $3.15 million in cash. $3.15 million in cash. The agents removed the cash, placed it on Todd Zappone's desk, and just sort of ogled over it all day long. And at the end of the day, the agents they boxed the cash up, and they removed it from the premises. Before the agents removed it from the premises, Todd Zappone begged them to count the cash because he wanted them to count it and issue a receipt for it. The agents refused to do that, which
now,
was
how can they
really
refuse
terrible. That was terrible judgment on their part. It was really a very amateurish operation.
But
anyway,
hold on.
The whole thing was led by an agent who was at that time. This was one of his first cases, and he was about 25 years old. He orchestrated this whole thing. Anyway, so the agents boxed the cash up, took the cash with them, and kept the cash overnight. The following morning, mind you, the agents never counted the cash. The following morning, the agents brought the cash to Brinks in Toledo, Ohio, and Brinks counted the cash and issued a receipt for $1.264 million. So what happened to the other $1.886 million in cash? We just don't know.
So how do you prove it? Hold on right there. Stop.
Meanwhile, the client, my clients, this raid, it was all done ex parte. They went into court. They got an ex parte warrant. My clients had no due process whatsoever. All this happened against my clients without due process, so their constitutional rights were violated, and many laws were broken in the process of this. So that is the basis of our lawsuit. My clients, when this happened, their business was they had a loan from the bank, and the bank saw what happened, and the bank basically foreclosed their loan, and as a result, the bank had a receiver appointed for the business, and the receiver took control of the plant and equipment, and that shut the business down. So my clients had a valuable, thriving, growing business that employed many people, and as a result of this action, their business was shut down.
And so where do we go from there?
To get back into business.
Yeah, so where do we go from there? I mean, we've got a couple of minutes left here. I mean, that lays it out pretty well. I mean, first of all, how can they not count the money? How can they not return the money? How can they prove how much money they had? I guess that's a very quick answer on that. But how do you protect yourself if the IRS shows up at your home, your place of business, wherever they might show up? How do you protect yourself? Real quickly, we only have a couple of minutes, like I said.
God help you if the IRS does show up. These are the IRS, what they call the special agents. They operate in the darkness of night. They carry guns, and they just kind of do what they want. They're the American secret police, and God help you if these people get involved in your life. Okay, and so I just. So, and what's happened to the Zappones now, the government has acknowledged that the raid was wrongful. They have basically they've taken the remaining money and they've applied it against the Zappones' tax liability. All of their income was reported on, all of the money that they had was reported on tax returns. They never evaded any taxes, and the balance of the money was applied against their loan. So they've filed all their tax returns, they paid all their taxes, and now they're trying to get back into business. But meanwhile, they've been just wronged terribly by the federal government here.
But what's the recourse? You can't fight the government. 20 seconds for the last word, my friend.
Okay, we're suing the federal agents involved in this. That's called the Bivens action. We're suing them personally. We put the government on notice, and as soon as our notice period, our 6-month notice period is up, we will sue the federal government. And, we live in the greatest country in the face of the earth, but it's not a perfect country. This lawsuit will help make our country better.
Greatly appreciate it. Stephen Dunn, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too as well. It's sometimes you cross the line. You see, sometimes taking the money is one thing, but you shoot somebody's dog or make somebody's dog. I mean, that's just too much.
I don't think you understand. These boys killed my dog.
Say that again. It's all right. I like Mark. 52 after on the show. It's the Steve Gruber Show. We'll be right back.